And when they are out on the practice field, all eyes will be on whether or not one notable member of the Bills is there with the rest of his team. James Cook watch is officially on. He had not been at any of the voluntary workouts over the course of the last couple weeks. That was not necessarily a huge surprise, but now things, of course, get to a different magnitude now that we're at the mandatory part of the offseason. That mandatory word is very important. So we are joined this evening, for at least the start of the show, by our contributor, Joe Buscaglia. Hi, Joe. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm great, Matt. What's going on?
Well, my question is, what do you think? You think he's there tomorrow? James Cook, what do you think?
If I had to guess, I think he's there just because he would get fined if not. The Bills have kind of said all the right things when it comes to James Cook, saying that they've been in contact and that he's going to be there when he feels the time is right. I think it's a convoluted situation because there's contract at play here, and whether or not the Bills are actually going to play ball with the type of money that James Cook wants is another question in its entirety. But I think for Cook, even if he were to miss this week, it doesn't really make sense for him to hold out or hold in, I should say, seeing as how he would lose an accrued season if he holds out for too long. And it wouldn't make too much sense for him because he's still trying to get to a payday to whenever this 2025 season is over and it gets to free agency and everything along those lines. So, I tend to not make too great of a big of a deal of this whole thing just because, James Cook, he's going to do what he's going to do. And it's literally 3 days in the month of June. And, at the end of things, if he shows up to camp, no one cares. But his checkbook might get hit a little bit if he doesn't show up.
So this is one of the things that I have said for a couple months now while the James Cook stuff has been going on, and I want to get your take on this. Now, this is crazy because it's relative, right? James Cook is going to make a little bit more than $5 million this season. But one of my points for the last several months has been that James Cook doesn't make enough money to hold out in the way that you need to hold out to really kind of send a message. I understand the 3 days of mandatory minicamp would not completely destroy his paycheck and his wallet. But I don't think this is going to training camp. And if he's holding out in training camp, he doesn't make enough money to be taking those fines on the chin.
Yeah, and the biggest piece about this is if he holds out, then, we're starting to get into the land of accrued seasons. And if he doesn't get an accrued season here, then he's still under contract next year. So it behooves him to show up. It behooves him to have another good season and build on what he did last year. And if he didn't get the contract extension that a lot of the guys did, like Rousseau, like Benford, like Shakir, like Terrell Bernard. But I think it's a little bit of a different situation because those guys weren't resetting the market for their own position. They weren't getting in even to the top 5 realm of their own positions. Whereas, James Cook, that's kind of what he wants here. And are the Bills really willing to pay $15 million per year to a player on offense that played under 50% of snaps last year? It's kind of and was for the most part a 1A in a 1A 1B situation last year with Ty Johnson. So they like it. They love him. They're saying all the right things. They love him in the locker room. I don't think this is like a personality driven thing whatsoever. I think it's just a matter of him wanting to, put his best foot forward to try and get paid and to voice his displeasure with however he wants to. But at the end of the day, even if he misses these 3 days, I don't think it matters much because it's worth it to him more than not to go to training camp and to have a good season for the Bills.
What's the number, right? I know Brandon Beane told us at the NFL owners meetings that he did not anticipate something happening with James Cook. So clearly, in my mind, let's pretend that we're in their position, right? James Cook has a number that he wants to get paid, and it's been said on social media that that's around $15 million. Then you have the Bills side. Now, we don't know what the number the Bills would feel comfortable paying James Cook is. What do you think it should be? What would be the number that you would be willing to pay James Cook if you were Brandon Beane to kind of end all of the nonsense that's taken place over the last couple months?
If it's me, I'm a little bit shrewd, so I would say 8 or 9, just because running back position to me, especially when they're running a committee the way that they do, that's not super conducive to how I'd want to build a team. But that's just me. The other part of this is the Bills have never paid a running back for a lucrative second contract. And even though running back is kind of making a revival around the NFL and the running games because of the proliferation of cover two high shell defenses that are taking away explosive passing attacks, you're seeing the running game start to percolate a little bit more here. But even with that in mind, I still need to see James Cook be someone that can be out there for 65 to 70% of the snaps. And they just haven't had him do that just yet. And he's a lot older than people think. Like, he's not like he's just 24 years old. He's turning 26 next month. And so then you start to get into with running backs, they get a little bit more wear on the tires a lot quicker. And this is probably why it's so important to James Cook to get a deal locked in. But if it's me, I'm probably just standing pat if I'm the Bills, especially with all of the money that they just shelled out. Their cap space next year is not as good as it was this year. They've already got a ton of owed cap space to a lot of different pieces, especially with all the extensions that they just handed out. And they really have to pick and choose wisely, because not only is James Cook a free agent, but so is Connor McGovern, their starting center, and they value that position very highly. David Edwards, their left guard, is a free agent too, so we can't forget about him. And then if you want to go further, Osiris Torrance, who will be a free agent after the 2026 season. And if he takes the step that I think a lot of people are thinking about, then that's going to be someone else that you have to think about paying near top of market for his position. So this is bigger than just James Cook. And that's why the Bills are being very smart and pragmatic about their approach.
Okay, so I want to bring up what Scott said here on Twitter, because I was going to ask you almost the exact same question. He said the Bills hold all the cars. If I was Bean, I would make him play on his deal and then franchise tag him. Isn't that the most obvious thing for the Bills to do? Is not budge this year, franchise tag him next year at what, $13.5, $14 million. I know that's more than they would feel comfortable paying a running back, but then you get him almost all the way to that 28 number that everybody always talks about, and then you reset.
Sure. I would probably, if they were going to go the tag route, I would probably go transition tag, just because that would mean you lock them in at a little bit of a lower rate than what a franchise tag is. And, teams aren't really going out of their way to throw around money for even transition tags.
Especially for running back.
Yeah, that's probably how I would play it if the tag was the way that they were going to go. But the thing I brought up is important. In 2026, right now, if you go over on overthecap.com with their projected cap space, the Bills are around, and this is still without their top three or three of their top picks unsigned to this point. Next year, they're still over $10 million. So they need to work just to get under the cap. So are you throwing $13 million for James Cook? So if you were to extend him, that's a lot different, because then that cap number goes way down, because you get to control the numbers on the cap, and then it's a slow build up. But with a transition tag or a franchise tag, that's a fully guaranteed, as long as he signs it, fully guaranteed 1-year deal. You're not able to split up the money the way that you are with a long-term extension. So that's why this is so difficult and so convoluted, to where the Bills, I think they're really doing their due diligence here, and I don't think they should just throw around a contract extension just because he says he wants one. I think they need to do what's in the best interest of them, and how much is spending, or if you're spending that type of money on a running back, where are you sacrificing elsewhere on your roster when you have a guy in Ray Davis who could probably step in and do a pretty solid job for you if he has to, if James Cook moves on after 2025. So that's why, to me, I think they're playing this the right way right now. And even if it's hurt feelings, he's still going to show up. He's still going to play, and we'll see what happens in 2025.
I keep thinking back to that Monday Night Football game last year against the Jets, where Ray Davis was fantastic for the Bills. And because James Cook is not an every down player, you still would have Ty Johnson in your back pocket to do all of the things that you love Ty Johnson being able to do. That's not, and you can draft one. James Cook is not a good player, but he, I feel like the Bills do have the leverage in this situation. But yeah. I want to ask you one not James Cook question. Okay. What is the biggest storyline for the Bills this week, not tied to James Cook?
It's a good question.
I'm full of them, Joe.
Well, Josh is going to be there since we saw a picture of him earlier today.
Yes.
So that was one of the biggest questions answered. I just kind of want to see how the offense kind of flows together with Keon Coleman, with Joshua Palmer, if Joshua Palmer is back, because last time we saw him, he did not practice after doing something that irritated him. He had to go out into the locker rooms, came back, didn't take another rep. That was on Tuesday. So we'll have to see if he's out there. But he's someone to keep an eye on. Dalton Kincaid, I think whether or not he's kind of like taking many steps forward. I think that is the biggest thing I'll be kind of keeping an eye on this week, because at this point in time, offense is usually out ahead just because defense can't be physical. So you want to see the boxes being checked here, as opposed to like coming away from minicamp going, oh my goodness, Elijah Moore is going to be a 1,500-yard receiver. No, don't take the fool's gold in spring. Just take it for what it is. If receivers are looking good and they're winning one-on-ones, that's a check mark, because that's what they should be doing. So that's what I'll be keeping an eye on.
Oklahoma City Thunder in blank.
5.
Wow. All right. That is Joe Buscaglia. He covers the Bills as well as anybody on the planet. You can read all of his work at The Athletic. You can listen to his podcast at the Buffalo Beat. I was pretty proud of that promo. I thought I did a nice job plugging you there. Thanks for joining, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.